really have no idea if I'm going to be able to paint and talk about something, but I've had this idea floating around in my head. The idea is about small talk, and like a lot of people don't like small talk because if you're an introvert, it can be really like off putting, which I find to be true. I am definitely an introvert, and there's definitely times where, at the grocery store or whatever, someone will talk and you just don't want to talk to them. So I have an example of this. Because it can be stressful. A couple of weeks ago, I was at a drive-through at a fast food place, and the girl in the drive-through window was just super chatty. Definitely an extrovert, or she just felt like she had to be one at work. I'm not really sure. But anyway, she just started asking me about my day, and I was exhausted. And the other thing is that she just like wouldn't let me um give like shallow non-answers. And this, what I'm thinking about small talk is actually how important shallow non-answers kind of are. But so I would say like, oh yeah, it was good, like something like that. And then she would ask for specifics. So she'd be like, what was good about it? What are you doing? Where are you going? Blah, blah, blah. I was just like, okay, it was good, but I'm exhausted and your questions feel overwhelming. Um, anyway, I eventually said something um, because it was actually kind of the day I had been delivering some watercolor paintings to an art show. And I was like, I just don't want to explain that to her. I'm exhausted and I want to go home and not explain it. Anyway, so I was just like, I'm just really tired. Like, I don't want to explain it because I'm kind of blunt like that sometimes, especially when I'm tired. And she was just like, okay, anyway. And then I asked her about herself. So then she started talking, which was totally fine. It's so much easier um, letting other people talk and not having to, you know, do it yourself, think of stuff. And I would actually, she even like was a little bit too, I don't know, I don't know if I would say overshared exactly, but um, for me, a perfect stranger, she maybe gave me too much information. And anyway, and here's my thought about that is I think that small talk, so like the talking that we do that's kind of feels unimportant or inconsequential is actually what has to happen to lead to like big talk or whatever you want to call it, deep talk. Like the important conversations that we have um, are based on the small talk conversations that we have. So I started thinking about this whole thing and like feeling like it was important after I had a friend a couple years ago. I had a friend that I would go on a walk with every week, and she just didn't believe that small talk was valuable. So I think she kind of did it like we would start our walk, and she would kind of ask me about my week. But it got to the point after we had been doing this for a while, our once a week walk for a while, that I didn't trust her, even with like my regular day to day stuff. Um, and so I would kind of give her non answers the best I could. And anyway, but I could tell that she was sort of doing it because she felt like she had to. And anyway, so we would do this like rehearsed small talk thing that, you know, sort of feels like society makes us do. But and then as soon as it was done, she would kind of plan out what she wanted to talk about that week, which was fine with me. Um, she would just launch into her her plans, and the plans that she had were always deep. So we were always talking about God and the meaning of life and a lot of other things like that, which I also didn't mind. But after a while, I started to realize that, and this is not the only reason, but one of the reasons I didn't trust her was because when I did mention like small talk stuff, she didn't treat it well, if that makes sense. Um, she used it to gain something, or she dismissed it as unimportant. And so as I started thinking about this, just after the fact, I realized how important it is, like small talk, or maybe we should say like medium talk. Um, so, okay. So, for example, I have another friend that I walk with, and like sometimes we talk about big stuff, the meaning of life or whatever, and what we believe about God. And but most of the time we talk about like medium stuff. So we talk about books that we like, TV shows that we like, um, things we did that week or whatever. And because those conversations are received well, it's easier later to talk about the big stuff. So, um, another example is me and my husband. He's a massage therapist. He goes to work every day or almost every day. And I go to work every day except for I mostly work at home, doing stuff like this. And at the end of the day, he comes home and we talk about his day. And honestly, like his days aren't that different. Like sometimes he'll have like a story about a client or something that's weird. And then, it's an interesting story. But most of the time, it's how many appointments he had and what he had for lunch. And then I tell him, like what I had for lunch and how many, how what I painted that day or, what I wrote that day, stuff like that. And those things are kind of, they could be seen as unimportant. But I think that over the years, we've been married for almost 14 years, um, it's added up. And like even at the beginning, it it's the foundation that makes it so that we trust each other to have deeper, more important conversations later. So the fact that like, he listens to me say, yeah, I worked on this painting or I wrote this email or whatever, like things that he's honestly not that interested in. Like he only cares because he cares about me. And he listens to me talk about that stuff. And then you know, it gets it gets well received, meaning he does listen. And like he might not always remember it all or whatever, but I don't always remember everything he tells me either, but I try to listen. And yeah. So it's sort of like our mundane day-to-day stuff, what laundry we did or those types of things lead to the other more important conversations where we're talking about our feelings and the stuff that's important to us, like deep in our souls. And the only way, I think the only way that those conversations happen is because I can trust him. I can trust that he's going to listen to me when I bring that stuff up. Because he listens to me when I bring up the like boring, non important stuff. Does that make sense? Um, the other thing about like the friend that I had that I didn't trust is like I learned through our conversations that she often has problems, like because she's told me stories about like people that she's worked with where she's maybe like overshared things or like told them things that like isn't appropriate to tell like a work acquaintance or a stranger, if that makes sense. um, because like not everyone deserves to know all that deep stuff about us. So, like, part of the way that we kind of feel out if they are deserving is small talk. So, I hope that makes sense. Anyway, so then, like, for her, the oversharing can happen, and then that makes awkward interactions. So, like, it sounded like there were times where people that she worked with didn't always love working with her, if that makes sense. Um, yeah, and this was all based on things she told me, so I don't know the whole story, but just speculating. So anyway, um, those are my thoughts about small talk, and it was actually easier to tell you as I was painting than I thought it would be, which was kind of fun. Um, and I guess like my last thought was like maybe the girl at the drive-through that was like stressing me out with her small talk. Um, it was just the fact that she wouldn't let it be small was part of the stress. Like, um, meaning like when I gave her answers, it was almost like it wasn't good enough. The answer wasn't good enough, like anyway. Um, I don't know if that makes sense or not, but anyway, those are my thoughts. That's why I think small talk is important.